G'day, welcome to another episode of Aaron's Adventures. The adventure we're on today is we're going to be installing an air conditioning system in this wall. As you can tell, it's not much of an air conditioning system, it's pretty holey. But the beautiful part is you don't need the aircon to install the air conditioner, because that's the easy part, you just slide it into it. So really all you need is this part only. And in fact, to be honest, we don't even need this, because we don't want to get this scratched up in the process of putting it in the wall. So what I'm taking the liberty of is cutting two pieces of wood. Basically, it's 452 millimeters in the width, 352 millimeters in the height. I've made it 355 and 455 just to give it a couple of millimeters extra so that it slides in neat. But basically, if the wood fits, then it's got to fit. So we can put that away, pulling up a rusty table, and we can literally do the whole job with just these two bits of wood. And, we don't need to mess with the air conditioning system. Now, the key point is when putting these things, the important part is when you go choosing where you want the aircon, obviously you tend to choose from the inside of the house as to where you'd like it to be. But where its final location is going to be really is determined by the outside brick. The internal wall where it's all plastered and that, you can mess with that. If the outside brick and then the structure of that is really where you want this, where it's going to govern it. As you may recall, these shelves from my hang anything on a wall video. This is where we want the air conditioning to go. The great thing about this sort of shelving system is it's quite versatile, and I can remove this bottom shelf and it doesn't affect the strength of the rest of it. We'll remove this section here, and we want it roughly somewhere about here, but it'll be the outside bricks that determine that. Now, if you recall in that other video, I did talk about how doing it the way that I did it to sink the drill hole deeper into the wall is that now that we're going to put the aircon roughly there so they won't matter, but these ones here that are left, less speed I go and put another shelf here, which actually I might just do that with the aircon go there. I could actually redo the shelf on the other side. We'll worry about that later, but I can always get a bit of dowel, knock that deeper in, put a bit of putty over the top of that, and repaint the wall, and they're gone. Beautiful. Now we want the aircon to go roughly here somewhere, so we need to know that what the maximum distance is. I obviously don't want it to be up as high as I can up to here, but obviously we don't want to hit it. Just as close as what we can get away with, and as close this way as what we can get away with. So the way that I've done that is with the tape measure that I've just lost. As I said, we go from the outside wall from where the window is, which is just on the other side of the wall. So I measured the distance from the window to the wall, added the width of inside the doorway, what the width of a brick is, plus that, and then plus that again, add them all together, and that gives us 1430 maximum up to that bit of board. So then we can put, we want to line it up to a nice even mortar joint, so we'll bring it back to whatever works well on the outside of the wall. I have to go up the floor because if you're finding the roof, the external wall is not always the same height as the internal wall. Often they'll be set, the internal wall is usually a little bit higher, some depending on how you've had your house done, could be much higher, depending on your eaves and what your setup is. So you can't go off the height of the floor doesn't change though. The floor's flat throughout the house, so the floor's more reliable. So if you give it our maximum, I'm going to push hard into the carpet. A centimetre here or there is not going to matter, as long as we know we can't go over 1.9 metres. So of course now we've worked out that it's 1430 is the maximum from this window's edge, which is, remember I said how I did it, it's because there's an internal wall that runs that way, so it's the width of that plus the wall plus again to the end of the shelf, which was 1430. So we've got off the edge of the brick, 1430 lands us about spot on to this mortar mark. So now we don't want to hard against that that shelf. Bring it in a little bit is okay. So if we're going to do that, we might as well bring it in one whole brick here. So really down this part of the wall here is where we're going to have it. And then the top of it will then be governed, of course, by a whole mortar joint here. To make sure, that, obviously here, that the outside brick is lower than what it is on the inside of the house. So I've allowed the running line of the brick from the, because the whole house is obviously at the same level, going down one brick, okay, so we need to come up one brick. So I'll measure off one brick up, so I can line it across by the mortar joint, say about here somewhere, and it was 1.9 was our maximum, which is roughly that mortar joint there. So again, we'll come down one. the width of our aircon and coming down there. So this one's not quite perfect, it's leaving a bit of a gap. But I'd rather have the mistake at the back of the house, not the front, if possible. And again, that has come perfectly into that brick. That's just by coincidence. But again, we're going to do this just using a 5 1/4 inch grinder. Surely a great big one would be great. You could carve it right into it. If we could bring Grinder Boy into the action, if you remember that from a how to remove a swimming pool video. But I'm trying to do this so it's relatable to anyone. So a 5 1/4 inch grinder is what most people have. We're going to do this whole job with that. And but what we first got to do, I'm dribbling on, I'm sorry, but this is important. We're going to check for plumbing in your walls, make sure that you've got no water pipes anywhere on the inside of the walls. And in this particular situation, I know we've got a power point down below here. It's a double wall, so the power cable will probably be inside the cavity. So I want to be sure that I'm not going to cut through that and damage that, or that's going to get in the way. And another way that I'm going to show you quickly a trick is to ensure that we're not going to put any pressure and weight while we've got nothing in here from the roof, is we're going to go up and remove some tiles and then have a look down in this cavity here where we're going to be putting it, check if there's any bracing from the roof, and then if possible remove as many tiles as we can. If you've got metal roof sheeting and you've got a metal roof that doesn't weigh so much, you've probably got much of a problem in that state. They're quite lightweight roofs. But an old one like this one that's all timber and all cement tiles, they're quite heavy. So we're going to remove as many as we can that's off that piece of timber that might be bracing on this wall temporarily till we get it in. Usually there's always one or two, or they do every second one with a nail. Find one that you can just push up. Once you've got that, then it makes it much easier to then remove the next one underneath. And usually, unless you live in a cyclone risk area, usually I get these nails. I want to take the weight away. Mark it really well because there's going to be dust flying everywhere. So I want to be able to see it. Basically what I'm going to do is turn it into a postage stamp. And what I mean by that is we're going to perforate it. So that way, because our grinder, as you know, it can't go all the way through. And we don't want fractures running up the wall or cracks or it to go anywhere past the point of what we're doing, so we get a nice neat fit. I've got a bigger, better drill, but again, I'm just going to do it with my little $50 cheapie. It's more, again, the drill bit is the concern. As I mentioned in my other videos, it's always the quality of the drill bit, not the quality of the drill. Immediately on hammer setting, we're going to perforations I've mainly done in the actual bricks themselves that need to go through. In the mortar, not so much as important. But what we're going to now do with the grinder is cut straight down that line. Of course, the grinder's not going to go all the way through. What the grinder's really going to give us, though, is a nice, neat looking edge on the outside. As we go inside of the brick, if we make a little bit of a butcher of it, it doesn't matter, you're not going to see it. The only bit we're going to see is the outside, and even to tidy up the edge, there is a little trick to make it look really good, but we'll deal with that later on in the video. You should already use a face mask. I'm just not very smart. I'm just going to quickly touch base while I think you're letting my hands have a rest. The first brick is going to be a pain in the ass. It really is, like a pain in the butt, you should say. But once you get that out, it gets easier and easier and easier. As soon as you get a whole brick out, the next one's even easier, and then you do the outer ones last. Do not be tempted to go for the outer ones first, because then you run the risk of damaging the bricks that you want to keep intact and looking good. Go for the centre. So when you go make a mess of this, crumb it up and wreck it and everything, that's great. These will fall away quite easily once you've got the inside, because then you can get at it from the inside. And once you can get the grinder in there, you can then slice it up, and again it gets easier and easier. Let's finish this off. Here's something else. Inside here, we've got a bit of wire coming around here on the side. You see that bit of wire that strengthens the two bricks together. I didn't get in there with the cutters and cut that bit of wire out. I'll basically break that off and free that, and that'll help it a great deal, because at the moment that kind of anchors the two together. It's making this stronger. So if we free that up, that'll allow movement and make this a lot easier. Okay, so once we've reached this stage, we're pretty much laughing. So go for the inside bricks first, because now we can get the grinder, as you can see, up underneath in all kinds of directions, and then carve that up, because initially the grinder can only get in so deep, but now we can pretty much cover any depth that we want. Okay, so now that we've got to this stage, what I did towards the end was refrain from using the chisel, because if you whack chisel at the last minute trying to clean it up, you could lose a good chunk of brick or something very important to take away that nice neat finish that you've got. Go in with the grinder. The moment that you can get your grinder in from any angle, use the grinder to clean it up. That will guarantee you a nice, smooth, accurate finish. Now we want to go through to the next wall on the other side.